All right, good evening. My name is Matthew Lowry. Some of you might remember, but in 2008, the Tesla Motor Company came out with the first mass-produced all-electric highway-capable vehicle. It was called the Tesla Roadster, and it was, of course, advertised as being extremely green. The claim to fame for them and all hybrid electric vehicles and fully electric vehicles that have come since then have been that they have either zero or very low emissions from the tailpipe. This, however, takes a very narrow viewpoint of the entire production, manufacturing, and asset allocation process that goes into making these vehicles. Thus, the proposition that I'm making today is that all electric vehicles are not as environmentally friendly as they're often advertised to be. The three supporting claims that I'm going to be talking about: first, that these vehicles require a large number of batteries, both lithium-ion and nickel-cadmium, and that the mining, transportation, and production of these batteries creates a lot of pollution. Second, I'm going to be talking about the fact that these batteries are extremely heavy, and that this results in a lot of energy-intensive alternatives being used to lighten the rest of the vehicle. Thirdly, I'm going to be talking about the electricity that is used to charge these vehicles, which tends to come from, as was actually mentioned earlier, power plants that are generally fueled by fossil fuels, thus creating a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So going to my first point, one of the important things to understand is that a lot of materials for both the batteries and the motors in these vehicles come from other countries. In a report in The Atlantic, or in an article from The Atlantic, as of 2006, nearly all of the world's roughly 137,000 ton supply of rare earth oxides came from China. The percentage has not changed a lot, although it has changed some in recent years, but China has always had the majority of that trade. And we have seen in the past, China typically doesn't enforce as many environmental policies, especially when it comes to mining for rare minerals and metals. In a PBS interview conducted by Lindsay Hilson, she stated, after visiting the Batao mining region in China, that rare earth processing in China is a messy, dangerous, polluting business. It uses toxic chemicals, acids, sulfates, and ammonia. Workers have little or no protection. Similarly, in an article that was published last week by Amnesty International, there are children as young as 7 years old working for up to $2 daily mining in dangerous conditions to gather cobalt, which is used in lithium batteries, and this is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And every aspect of the transportation of these metals and metals back to the United States, where a lot of these things are actually produced, has some sort of fossil fuel along the way, whether it's on ships, trains, or trucks. All right, so the next point that I would like to talk about is the fact that these batteries are extremely heavy. For example, the Tesla Model S has over 7,000 individual cells inside of it. These are about the size of a AAA battery, and they get extremely heavy. So the manufacturers of these vehicles have to compensate for this weight to keep the vehicles efficient by using energy-intensive materials like aluminum and carbon fiber. According to the National Research Council paper published in 2010, the energy used during manufacturing and disposal of vehicles is claimed as 97 gigajoules per vehicle for current gasoline-powered vehicles and 138 for plug-in hybrid vehicles. So that's 42% more energy during manufacturing and disposal of hybrid electric vehicles, and these numbers go up for fully electric vehicles. Similarly, the California Energy Commission's Fuel Cycle Assessment Report stated that vehicle production contributes on the order of 10 to 20% of overall emissions over the lifetime of the vehicle, and that this percentage increases when it's either meeting high standards for emissions or it's electric vehicles that are powered by batteries because they require so much more energy input. So now that I've talked to you about all the effects that batteries have on these vehicles, I'd like to talk to you about the electricity that is used to power them. And this is specifically pertaining to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and fully electric vehicles. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, as of 2015, 67% of electricity in the United States is generated via fossil fuel-fired power plants, and 39% of that comes from coal. And anytime any of those are burned, there are greenhouse gas emissions. According to a study published by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in an article by an AP Science writer, if the electricity for all electric cars comes from coal, it actually produces 3.6 times more soot and smog deaths than gas because of the pollution made in generating that electricity. So it's really important to understand that electric vehicles, they're not as clean as they're advertised to be. You see it and you think, oh, I'm going to be environmentally friendly. I'm going to you know, and save the whales and whatever it may be. But there's a lot of other factors that go into, especially the regions where they're mined from, not always stable regions, a lot of waste going to the groundwater, a lot of greenhouse gases are emitted. And so the three main points that I've talked about today, specifically that the batteries themselves, both the transportation production, as well as the heavy weight that they add to the vehicles, that all adds a lot to the energy that is used to make these vehicles and increases their total life cycle energy. And also that the electricity that is used to power these vehicles is at least at 67%, not as environmentally friendly as most people think that it is. Thank you.
All right, Matthew, I like the attention device talking about the Tesla and the general belief that these are going to be green vehicles to set up the controversy. You've got a very clear identification of what the proposition is. There's an excellent layout of what the secondary structure is. Sometimes the phrasing on the secondary points needs to be more like a claim, but I could understand where you were headed with it. You signpost those points in the body of the speech pretty clearly, and you're also giving good explanations of the information. There are a couple of places where I think that if we're going to be looking at comparisons, it's not quite as complete as it could be, but you've given us some good statistical information as the basis of making a comparison. Like I said, internally the transitions between the main points were very clear to follow. I also thought you did a good job citing your sources throughout the presentation, and they all sounded like they were relatively credible. There are a couple of places, like I said, where some of the statistical information leads us to inferences that I think probably suggest that you are correct. However, you know, the best one that you had was the one that talked about the smog and soot deaths, which is not necessarily the only kinds of environmental harms that occur, but they're definitely the ones that are easiest to measure, I think. And the fact that you know, the stuff that comes from the fossil fuel plants is more dangerous as a consequence than the petroleum material. I think that was an interesting way to make that comparison. You did a good job presenting evidence on each of the points, so I think your generalizations are relatively sound, and you did a good job talking to us and explaining ideas and concepts as you went along as well. Thank you.